Okay. So good morning, class. We now begin with Mughal nobility. In the previous time when we met, we read about Akbar. We talked about Akbar and Bairam Khan. Bairam Khan was the person who acted as a tutor in the initial stages of Akbar while he was growing. But Bairam Khan, being very cruel and arrogant, he was removed from his post, and it was then that Akbar proclaimed himself as a king, though he was still of a tender age. He took up the reins in his hand and became the king of Agra with his capital at Agra, king of uh, India. Then we talked of the various conquests which Akbar undertook initiated, like the conquest of Malwa, then Gujarat, Chittor, and Ranthambore. Then he also removed his half brother Mirza Hakim and gave the position to his sister to rule there. Ahmednagar, which was under Chand Bibi, who took up a heroic fight and was then treacherously killed. So we talked of Akbar's conquest as well as his early life. Now we talk of Mughal nobility. That means those nobles who were working under the Mughals during that time. Okay, so we begin from now here. Okay. When Babur came to India, he was accompanied by a number of Central Asian nobles, that is Amirs as they were called. They called Turains and some Iranis. Later, some Afghan and Indian Muslims too became nobles. These nobles were granted jagirs, which consisted of several villages and towns. In return, they maintained an army to help the emperor. So now they are talking about the nobles who not only were known as Amirs in that time, they were either Turanian or they were Iranis, either from Iran or from Turkey. Okay, but later on there were some additions. There were Afghan nobles also included, and the Indian Muslims were also taken a part of this nobility, and they were given small areas, and in return they maintained an army to help the emperor. Okay, now soon Babur decided to take the help of powerful and wealthy Indian Muslim families called Sheikh Zadas. These underlined Sheikh Zadas, they were the rich Indian Muslims. He also wanted the support of Rajputs, and so he gave both these groups important posts in his court and made them amirs. As a result, a large number of Indian amirs began to serve the emperor. Later, when in 1580 AD, the Turani and Irani amirs rebelled in Bengal and Kabul, he suppressed them with the help of Indian amirs. Akbar also gave high posts to other Hindus like Raja Birbal and Todarmal. So this is the time when we talk of Akbar's diplomacy. What is diplomacy? That means a tactful way of dealing. So what he did was, earlier the Amirs were basically from outside the country. But now what he did was he took up Indian Muslims and Afghans as turning them and giving them high posts such as nobles in his army. Now apart from this, the Sheikhzadas, that means the Indian Muslims who were rich, apart from their support, he also needed support from the Rajputs of those times. They were the ruling class and were very powerful. So, what he did was he gave important high posts to these Sheikhzadas and the Rajputs, and in return, he got ample support from them. Now, what happened was, seeing all this in 1580, the Turani and Irani nobles they got very upset and they started a revolt against him, against Akbar in Bengal and Kabul. Okay, these are the two places where the revolt began. And so Akbar very aptly curbed that revolt and put a check on the Iranis and Turanis with the help of Indian amirs. Okay, and then he also gave high posts to one of the Hindus, many of the Hindu Rajas like Raja Birbal and Todarmal. Okay, now Akbar and the Rajputs. Now, obviously, Rajput was the warrior class of India. They were warriors, so to have hand in hand with them was necessary. To be friends with them was necessary. So he followed various policies with the Rajputs. Now let us see. Akbar realized very early in his life that he had to be Pasha of all his people, the Hindus as well as Muslims. He took several measures to win over the Hindu population. In 1562, he abolished the pilgrim tax on bathing at holy places like Banaras, Prayag, etc. So in 1562, he he finished the pilgrim tax, which was earlier asked by the Hindus were asked to pay if they went to Banaras for a holy or to visit a holy place or to take a bath in these places, they were asked to pay the tax. A certain amount of money was taken from them. But in 1562, this was stopped. And why he did this? So that he could have the Hindu population also working under him and following, knowing that he's a good man, they would follow him. Then in 1564 AD, he abolished the poll tax or jizya. Please underline this, he abolished jizya, which the non-Muslims had to pay. Now, every non-Muslim, that means who was not a Muslim, had to pay a poll tax called jizya. Now, that was also abolished, that he finished that. Now, no one had to pay the tax. He also abolished the practice of possibly converting prisoners of war to Islam. This was another very important step he had taken to force anybody to follow a religion. He stopped that, and especially the prisoners of war, they were forced to follow Islam. So what he did was he said, no, let them practice whichever religion they want to. With these measures, he laid the foundation of an empire where all citizens were treated equally. So this was the time when they were all the kingdom people were treated equally. Akbar's relations with most of the Rajput kings were friendly, cordial, and often excellent. So there was no harmony, there was ample harmony among the Rajputs and Akbar. In the middle of January 1562, please underline it, Akbar received Raja Bharamal, the chief of Amber or Jaipur, who offered his eldest daughter Harka Bai, to Akbar in marriage. So the Raja Bharmal, he was the king of Amber or Jaipur. He had offered his own daughter to Akbar in marriage. This marriage secured for him the powerful support of Amber throughout his reign. His Hindu wives were allowed to have complete religious freedom. Akbar celebrated all the festivals like Deepavali and Basant Panchami. Badauni writes that he allowed the burning of home in the apartment of his Hindu wives and wore the Rakhi on his wrist. Now, home is uh, that what we call it, dhoop batti. Okay, so he had allowed that it would be burnt, or the yagya, when a havan is done, that is also called home. Okay, so he allowed that, and he also practiced the Hindu festivals. He allowed his Hindu wives to practice whichever religion they want to, and he wore Rakhi also in his hand, which was a Hindu custom. Akbar found that Rajput warriors were brave and loyal. He allowed the rulers to rule over their kingdoms, and all of them became his amirs with jagirs. So they helped him by commanding his army or supplying contingents during a war. On the other hand, most of the Rajputs realized that Akbar was too strong to fight, and if they accepted his friendship, he would not attack them. So the Rajputs and Akbar, both of them had mutually decided not to go against each other. Rajputs were were warrior class, they were brave and loyal. Akbar, he was very powerful, so each of them knew that if they worked hand in hand, nothing would go wrong. However, some Rajput states like Ranthambore, please underline them, Ranthambore, Jodhpur, refused to submit to him. So he attacked and conquered them. After the conquest of Chittor, Rana Uday Singh of Mewar had fled from the fortress of Chittor. His valiant successor and son Rana Pratap Singh waged a long war with Akbar and gradually recovered much of Mewar, but not Chittor. Rana Pratap met the Mughals in a pitched battle of Haldi Ghati in 1576 AD. The Mughal army was led by Man Singh. So one Rajput fighting the other. Now what happened was there was the Rajputs who listened to him and became friends with him. Their kingdoms were given to them. But there were certain Rajputs like Ranthambore and Jodhpur. They refused to follow him, follow Akbar, and so the conquests were made in which the region of Chittor, a place called Chittor where Rana Uday Singh was ruling, he was the king of Mewar. He had to, he took up a fight and later on he fled. That means he ran away to the fortress of from the fortress of Chittor. Now, his successor, Rana Pratap Singh, you must have heard about Rana Pratap. So he waged a very long war with Akbar, and gradually he took over a number of parts of Mewar, but he could not win Chittor completely. And then a heroic battle of Haldi Ghati was fought in 1576 between the Mughal army and Rana Pratap. Now, the Mughal army was led by Man Singh, who was another Rajput. The Rajputs in both the armies fought fiercely. Rana fought obstinately till he received wounds from an arrow and then left the field of battle. After this, Rana continued to struggle against Akbar, waging guerrilla warfare till he died. Rana Pratap was the only Rajput ruler who refused to submit to Akbar. So Rana Pratap was the only ruler among the Rajputs who did not submit to Akbar. Okay. Now we come on to the religious beliefs. During those times, what were the religious beliefs? Let us see. Akbar was an Orthodox Muslim and spent several hours on praying every day. He had been brought up in an atmosphere of liberal ideas. He began to believe in Sulh-e-Kul, that means peace for all, and treated people of all religious faiths and all classes of society equally. He had gradually realized that all religions had a number of good points. So he felt that if the best points of all religions could be combined, the people of his empire would greatly benefit from it. Therefore, he suggested a religious path, which was called Deen-e-Ilahi or divine monotheism, religion of one God. It was based on the main ideals given in all religions. So what he did was he began to believe in Sulh-e-Kul, that means where peace should prevail among all people. And he created a society which was liberal, which was all where all were treated equally, and he took good points of all the religions, combined them, and he suggested of a religious path called Deen Ilahi. That means वो मार्ग जो ईश्वर की ओर ले जाता है. Okay, divine monotheism, religion of one God. God is one. Based on that, he formulated Deen Ilahi. Now, the basic principles of Deen Ilahi were very simple. It encouraged belief in one God. So the principles of the Ilahi were very simple, okay? We all know that God is one. Maybe we know him by different names according to our religion. Akbar declared himself as the spiritual guide of his people. He discouraged the killing of animals, giving cruel punishments to criminals, and the custom of sati, the practice of worshipping the sun, fire, and other sources of life was an important part of it. Akbar built a hall of worship called Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri. He invited Hindus, Muslims, Parsi, Jain, and Christian religious teachers and held religious debates and discussions with them in the Ibadat Khana. Akbar never learned how to read and write, but he possessed an almost superhuman memory power, which enabled him to remember accurately the contents of books read to him. He was always surrounded by learned people, and his court was famous for the 9 gems, the Navratnas, the Raja Birbal, Raja Mansingh, Raja Todarmal, Hakim Hakim Human, Mullah Dufiyaza, Faizi, Abul Fazl, Abul Rahim, and Tanseh. Akbar fell seriously ill with a stomach ailment in October 1605 and died at the age of 63. Even today, Akbar is remembered and admired by one and all as the greatest Mughal ruler. So, well, let us quickly know what we have read just now. He decided for a place of worship. There was a hall built which was called Ibadat Khana, which is still there in Fatehpur Sikri, where he invited all the religious heads of various religions. And there the debates and discussions were held so that all the common good of all the religions would be sorted and worked upon and followed in Deen Ilahi. That was the religion of divine monotheism. Okay, he was a liberal man. He possessed, though he did not know how to read and write, but he had a very sharp memory and he accurately remembered whatever he heard from people about the contents of the book. He also had 9 gems, as we call them, Navratna. So Navratnas were these people: Raja Birbal, Raja Mansingh, Raja Todarmal, Hakim Human, Mullah Dufiyaza, Faizi, Abul Fazl, Abul Rahim, and Tanseh. These were the people who worked in the court of Akbar and were the precious gems, the 9 gems he talked of. Okay, we stop here for today. Please go through the fact files. Okay, thank you, class.